Alright everybody, today we're working on this 2005 F150 with the 4.2 liter. We're going to be pulling the intake manifold out today. We're going to have to pull the air intake cleaner. We're going to have to remove the EGR valve. First thing I like to do is spray a little lubricant penetrating fluid on the EGR. I really like the Seafoam Deep Creep. It's the best stuff I use. You want to make sure you get inside this little compression nut here and around the threads there, and then also on the back side of the bolts that hold it to the intake. Do that first so it lets sit and penetrate for a little while. We're going to start getting all these hoses off. We're going to have to pull a set of wires off so we can clear the intake. Shouldn't be too bad, but there's a lot of bolts back into the cowling here that are going to be fun to get to. Alright, here we go. Start with this PCB peeler. Popped our air cleaner. Yeah, we got an 8mm for the screw clamp on the throttle body. And just loosen that a little bit. So the only thing about this is you got the mass airflow. Sits right here. It's just a little barbed plastic fitting holding it in. Press the release tab, out it comes. That already gave us quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this. Okay, we've got these little lock tabs. Put it back to a little screwdriver or pick, moving a little bit. It's been on here for a long time. That way you don't break the little plastic nipples off. It's easy to do. Okay, so we got the vacuum lines off of that. I'm going to press the release here. Pull the electrical portion off. That's for the sensor and the vacuum control. Okay, so we got that loose. Got these 10mm bolts for this put right hold down. One thing you should do, use a magnet tray. They work great. Keep all your bolts together. Set right on the battery there. made, and we'll come back to this when I get to some more harder parts. Okay, in the very back there, you can see we've got some spring clamps. Okay. I like to use this tool here. This is just made for spring clamps. It's just got teeth on there, but it's got these two slots made for these things, so it really grabs the spring clamps well. Release the tension, move them back on the hose a little bit. Okay, see, I moved it back, and then that is used for hoses. I like to use my hose pliers. You got a special little ring at the end to grab the actual hose. That's not actually what I use it for. I actually go around the pipe. Not sure if you can see this. And then I push the hose back. The twisting motion. Okay, just push it in front of it, push it back. And that way you don't damage the hose. Now you got to grab it around the hose. Do a little wiggle. This one's at a weird angle, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my pry bar. I'm going to do this carefully. There's plastic back there. Push just the right angle. Slide right off. There we go. That's a little bit of the hard stuff there. You can see how I got it slid back. Now I'm going to be able to get it off my hand. Okay, a lot of times what I'll do, I just grab a couple of spare bolts. I bolt in, and I take a bolt and just stick it in the hole. That keeps the bolt from going everywhere. Right, Face? Oh, I gotta get borrowed. I'll be back, everybody. Okay, so we've got we're pretty much ready to take the intake off now. We pulled all of the clips off. You know, we used our little pry tool. You know, just a little plastic pry tool. We used our hose pliers to remove the hoses. We used our spring clamp pliers for the spring clamps. And I also removed the 3 wires going across the top of the intake. I removed the, let's see, just see, here it is, the, where am I? There I am. The brake booster hose, okay? And then I also took the evap purge line, okay? And I just set it off to the side because it was kind of hanging in my way. And back here, okay, we've got the 2 coolant lines. Okay, we've got them plugged off with a bolt, and then right down here we've got this line here. It was a little difficult to get off because it was kind of, you can see it's been in there a long time, a little corroded. So I'm going to clean that nipple off before I reinstall and lube it up with a little bit of oil or something to make it slide on easier. So that's the that's the PVC inlet to the intake there. Okay, and then the coolant lines actually are supposed to cool the vapors before they go into the plastic intake. Doesn't always work so well. But anyways, we're going to attack this EGR valve. We've had it sitting here penetrating this whole time we've been working on it, and we also penetrated the exposed threads on the back. Okay, they're very important because that's where it gets tough, is once you start packing up all that dirt and grime on those threads that are exposed and it starts getting stuck. If you do get it stuck and it gets really difficult to back out, go back in a few turns and then come back out. And sometimes I've taken up to a half hour to remove one bolt just to not mess it up. And that saves you hours in repair time as well as parts replacement. So, you know, take your time pulling these exhausts, because anything related to exhaust is going to be very difficult because of the heat cycles. You know, that stuff just gets locked in there. A little bit of corrosion and it becomes a nightmare. You know, that's saying one broken bolt away from the 3-day job, you know. So take your time. I usually just use a crescent wrench on the big one here, and then you know, get two 10mm holding it in, one on either side. And we've already disconnected the electrical portion and the vacuum lines. Okay, and then once that comes out, everything will be really easy to do from there. Then we just got the 4 bolts. 1, 2. Anyways, there's 4 on either side. They're in perfect line. You can see the one right here in front, and they're in perfect line straight back. And the same on the other side. You know, there's 4 of them. So once you get those off and you have your EGR disconnected and all your little coolant lines, your PCV lines, booster line, you'll be ready to come off of here. And today we're going after the number 2 injector. It failed for some reason, so that's why we're pulling this intake. And those are 8mm heads, by the way. You're gonna need an extension. In the back there it gets a little tricky because you got little space there, so you're gonna have to play with your extensions. I have a generous selection of extensions in all different sizes, so it's pretty easy for me because I do this every day. But if you're doing this at home, you might have a little difficult time and have to run to the store for a certain size extension. I heard someone say a 6-inch, but I'm probably gonna go a little shorter than that. Probably a 3-inch with a deep socket. That would probably put me right on the money. Or 4-inch, something like that. Anyways, good luck, you guys. I'm gonna follow up once I get it off, and we're gonna do the injector removal. Okay, so that's what it looks like with the EGR off. That's a little difficult, but either it's going to break or it's going to come loose. If you don't get that, it's pretty difficult to get off. Alright, so we finally got down to it. We got the EGR removed, we got all our stuff disconnected. The bolts were pretty difficult. Well, some of them were. This back one here, you know, you can't see it, so I just had to kind of feel around for it. Same with this middle one. Back here, you got one straight down there, right behind there. Then this one in the back, though, I had real trouble. It was kind of hidden behind the harness there, so I had to kind of move the harness out of the way to get that. But now that I've got all my bolts free, I should be able to just come right up with this. Yeah. So you just kind of lift it up. You gotta lift it up past the bolts because they just stay in the intake. You can't remove them, so they kind of drop down a little bit. So you gotta lift them up. You know, you gotta lift the intake up a good 1.5 inches or so to get it clear of those bolts, and then it should come right out. Okay, so back here, I started pulling the intake up and kind of got stuck. Right here is a hold down for the main harness. You've got to pop it out of the hole, you know, the little barb fitting, or you can cut the tape, either one. I like to pop them and reinstall them. Keeps stuff from rubbing after you finish your repair. Okay, I got the intake off. There was one more, that big plug back there was also clipped to the back of the intake. Once you get your intake off, what I always do is I take some rags and I stuff them in the holes. That way I don't get anything down in the engine. Okay, you can use paper towels, anything to plug up the hole. If you want to just you know, give it a wipe and even put masking tape over it, that's fine too. Just whatever you do not drop anything down these holes. This one happens to have intake manifold runner control, so there is a little valve flap in there, but most engines, it'll just drop right down in there. You'll have to pull the intake or even the cylinder head in some cases, which has happened to me once before. So from now on, I always put rags in the intake holes. And then we're gonna, once we get all the intake holes filled up, we're gonna take our air wand and we're gonna clean all of this grime and crud out of here so we can pull this fuel rail up and replace the number 2 injector. That fuel rail is held down. I can see it better on this side, I guess. It's going to be the same on both sides. You've just got this this one little bolt down here. It looks like an 8mm. It might be a 7. No, it's 8. But yeah, there's one in the front, and then there's one in the very back. Same for both sides. You can see where the aluminum casting comes out. That's where the one bolt is. You can see in the back, that's where again the other bolt's going to be. Alright, going back together with this 4.2 intake. Just a little quick note, when you're putting these spring clamps back on, match up the marks where it was, so that it rests in that old mark on the hose. I've found that when I don't do that, sometimes they leak. So that gives it the most even pressure around the old dent, to say. With the new hose, it doesn't matter, but when you're going back on with a used hose with that groove in it where the clamp was, you want to try and get it just where it was. So that back on this 05 F150, had a little fun with it. My number 2 injector was bad, which is that one sitting right there. The number 1 sits a little further forward, as you can see right there. But anyways, I was originally I just had some injector fault codes, and I just had a dead misfire. So I just automatically, let's do an injector and pull the intake, and everything's good. So I replaced the injector, put everything back together, and clear my codes. But I still had a really bad misfire on that cylinder number 2, and misfire on startup. So what I had to do, I started racking my brain, and I pulled out my fancy injector pulser, really cheap tool to have for testing injectors. I love it. It's a kind of easy way to see if it's a control issue or if it's an injector issue. This really narrows it down quickly. So I was able to hook up my injector tester pulser, and I've got a bunch of old plugs that I've cut off old other harnesses. And I was able to plug it in, and I had an assistant start the engine and put it in drive to put load on it. And I was pulsing this while it was running, and the misfire was coming and going, so I knew my injector was actually functional. Because I thought maybe I got a bad one from the box, but it was working. I could hear it ticking, and it was changing the idle. It would smooth out when I would pulse the injector manually. So I was talking to my son about it, and telling him how on some vehicles you have to I have a very nice scanner. I run the Zeus. Oh yeah, I love Snap-on. A lot of the dealers use this scanner as well. But what I had to do, I had to go in, turn my headlight off. I had to go in here to, where did I go? Functional tests. And I had to go to reset the keep alive memory. Okay, and what that did is it reset the whole computer, everything, all the settings that it had been saving for emissions, shifting points, drivability stuff. But what happened is when the computer saw that the injector was faulted, it just shut down that driver for that injector to prevent any damage to the driver unit inside the PCM. This is like a fail-safe thing built into the computer so that it doesn't take out the entire computer and have to replace a very expensive part. So you have to have a good scanner, or anyone that that can go in and reset the keep alive memory. It's not just the codes, you have to reset the keep alive memory. And that reset my injector fault, and everything was hunky-dory after that.